And we have seen how to create vendors. Vendors have three different views. Unlike materials, which have so many different views, vendors just have general, finance, and purchasing views. We have seen that you can create general and purchasing view or general and financing view differently. And we have seen that we can create general and finance view together using FK01. And if you want to create general and purchasing view together, you can use MK01. And if you want to create all these views together, you can use XK01. Now, why do we need to have so many different transactions? And why do we need to separate the views? The reason is simple. The companies have departments. And when a vendor is being created, the finance department creates the finance view. The purchasing department creates the purchasing view. They don't want to crisscross. So that's why we have so many different transactions. And if somebody wants to create all the views together, they can do XK01. Then we have seen payment terms. What's a payment term? Payment term dictates how we need to pay back an invoice that we received from the vendor. We have seen examples of payment terms like 0001, 2, 0002, for example, is net 30. And then we have seen that apart from the number of days, we can also specify cash discount. And we have seen inco terms. What's an inco term? An inco term specifies an industry standard term that's used to understand how a vendor needs to supply goods in terms of logistics. So standard examples of inco terms are cash on delivery, free on board. And then inco terms is also going to have two parts. Part 1 is the standard key and part 2 is a free form text. Cash on delivery until the warehouse or until the dock. Free on board until where? Until the dock. And from that point on, it's the duty of the customer. We have seen different units of measures. Standard unit of measures are already defined in SAP. And if you want to have your custom unit of measures, like a carton of beer, 10 bottles, right? And we have also seen the source of data in the PO. Data from the header comes from the vendor. Data in the line items comes from the material master. Header, line items. Header comes from the vendor. Line items comes from the material. And we have seen the order of precedence in the PO, meaning if a particular piece of data comes from two different sources, you know how to check which one takes precedence. Just maintain the data and create transaction and check where the data comes from. We've also seen what are texts. Texts are little pieces of data that can be tagged to master data and that flows through to the transaction when you create them for that particular set of master data. So if you want to tag a material with a certain text, whenever you create a purchase order, that text flows through to the purchase order line item.
Procuring non-stock material. So the first question that you might have is, what is a non-stock material? And of course, the follow-up question is, Why is procuring stock material or non-stock material any different from one another? Let's explore that. In our coffee shop, we procure coffee beans. We also procure stirrers. Is procuring coffee beans any different from procuring stirrers? Well, purely from a logistics perspective, they're not different. Maybe they require separate storage conditions, separate packaging, but beyond that, purely from a logistics perspective, they're not different. The vendor loads them up in the truck. The truck is unloaded at our warehouse, and we go stock them in the respective storage locations. So, what really is different? Well, for starters, coffee beans represent a significant value. 100 pounds of coffee beans, say $10 a pound, 100 pounds of coffee beans is $1,000. But 100 quantity or 1,000 quantity of stirrers is probably $10 or $20. So there's a lot of difference in the value. So purely in terms of stock keeping, it doesn't make any sense to count the stirrers. Oh, I got 1,200 stirrers. I got 222 stirrers. Does it make sense? No. It's just a waste of time and energy to count the value of stirrers or even the stock of stirrers. And before we go any further, since we are talking about a topic called valuation, let's take a quick detour and understand what really is valuation. You see in the accounting tab of the Material Master that there's something called as valuation class. What is valuation class and how does it affect the value of the material? And I said for price control, select V. Typically for all materials that are procured, not manufactured. All materials that are procured have a price control of V. And what is V? V stands for moving average price or MAP. You could call it weighted average, or it's all the same thing. It's averaged out every time we procure. We're going to talk about it. So why don't we do something? Let's create a material, set the moving average price to 0 by default, and then start issuing some POs and see the difference. Alright, so we're gonna do MM01. Let's create a brand new material. Coffee beans, instead of 03, let's call it 06, so that we know that this is a different material and it's just starting off. Retail sector, and it's a raw material, right? So hit enter, and we are only interested in 3 views: basic data, purchasing data, accounting data. Hit OK. And for plant, as usual, we use the Chicago plant. And the coffee beans or bags, whatever, pound. Material group is food. Hit enter. And purchasing group is US1. Hit enter. And finally, the valuation class is 3000. And price control is V. V for moving average. And if you look at the possible options there, you'll see 2 different values. S for standard price, V for moving average price. And like I said, for all materials that are procured externally, always use V. V for moving average. Alright, so we're done with that. We're going to hit save. It's going to issue a warning. Ignore that. Click OK. Alright, coffee beans 06 is created. And of course, if you go back to coffee beans, hit enter, and go to the accounting view, enter plant Chicago 1, you'll see that the total stock is 0, the moving average price is 0, and the total value is 0. So nothing has been procured, we don't have stock yet, and the average price or the moving average price is 0. So let's keep this screen right there and go open another screen and do a purchase order ME21N. Alright, doesn't matter which vendor, so just select some vendor, and of course the purchase order of US01, some purchase group, and company code US01. Select coffee beans, not 03 but 06, the material that we have just created, and we're going to do a quantity of 1, just 1. Of course, use a plant Chicago 1, enter, and we're going to put a price of $10, right, and hit save. Okay, a purchase order is created. Let's go quickly save. Control C. If you go back to the other window, you'll see that nothing has changed here. If you want to see the changes, this screen doesn't refresh automatically. So if you want to see the changes, you got to go back and then hit enter again. Go to accounting view, enter Chicago 1, hit enter. So that's how you refresh for changes. But over here nothing has changed. The stock remains 0, value remains 0, moving average price remains 0. So that means, so irrespective of the number of purchase orders that you created, the value does not change. But when does the value change? Value changes during goods receipt. That's when you have received the goods, the physical inventory, and the stock goes up and a whole bunch of changes happen. Let's go do a goods receipt. What's the goods receipt? Alright, the transaction for goods receipt is MyGo. So go to MyGo, enter your purchase order, Control V, and storage location, raw material. Make sure to click item OK. So we're receiving a quantity of 1 at the price that we have seen in the purchase order, $10. Click save. So material document is created. That means we have completed the process of receiving the goods. Go back to the other screen, the material master screen. Start all over again. Accounting 1, Chicago 1. You see that? The moving average price or the moving price is changed to $10, and the total value is $10, and the total stock is $1. So as soon as you finish the goods receipt, SAP has automatically updated the material master. With what? With the price, the quantity, and the total value. The total value is really simple, right? Price multiplied by the total stock gives you the total value. So let's catch up with the slides. So what have we done here? We have created a material master for 06. Set the price control to V, and of course, since we are creating this material for the first time, the moving average price is 0 and the total value is 0, total stock is 0, everything is 0. The first step that we have done is create a PO, and when you created the PO, after you saved it, you went back to the material master and nothing has changed. And after that, you have done the goods receipt. So when you have done the goods receipt, that's when the price has changed. The price changed, the stock changed, and the total value changed. The total value is basically a multiplication of this and this. So if you multiply both these fields, you get the total value, right? So if you do another purchase order at a price of $10 per kilo or pound, the effective average price is going to remain the same, right? So that scenario is simple. You can do it in your system and see the effect of it. The average price does not change, the quantity and value changes, obviously. But what if the price changes in the next purchase order? Again, let's do a purchase order. This time, let's do it for a quantity of 2. Alright? And then we're going to do it for Chicago. Instead of a price of $10, let's do $20. Okay? And then hit save. Save your purchase order. Control C. Copy your purchase order. Go to MIGO and do a goods receipt against that purchase order. Do an item OK and click save. Let's go back to the material and see what happens. In the material master, go back and come again. Select the accounting view, click OK, select Chicago 1 plant, and what happens here? The stock has changed to 3, which is right. The first order was for a quantity of 1, the second order was for a quantity of 2. So 1 plus 2 equals 3. What's the total value? The total value is a multiplication of 16.67 multiplied by 3. So let's see if that is correct. Open a calculator and say 16.67 multiplied by 3. That's 50, right? The system seems to have calculated everything right. Now the question you might have is, how did it arrive at a price of 16.67, the moving average price? What's the formula used to arrive at that? The formula for calculating the moving average is this. The moving average price equals total value, meaning total existing value, plus GR value, the value of the goods that we have received, divided by the total stock at hand, plus the GR quantity, the new quantity that's being received. So when the first order was created, let me go back. So when the first order was created, the value was, everything was 0, right? So it was all 0, 0, 0. The quantity was 0, value was 0, and the average price or moving average price was 0. Now as soon as you have done the goods, this is when the PO was created. And then you have created a goods receipt. You have created a goods receipt at what price? Quantity of 1. And the value we don't know. The moving average price or the average price was $10. So 10 multiplied by 1 will be $10, and that will be your valuation. And that was expected. So when you created the second order, right, the PO is created for quantity of 2 and the dollar price was $20. So the GR value, of course we didn't do a GR here, so that's that. And when we have done the GR, the quantity for which we have done the GR is 2. The dollar value is at $20 per pound. So the GR value is 20 into 2, $40. Right? Now,
how did SAP calculate the moving average price? That's the question. So we said the moving average price equals current value. What's the current value? $10. Plus the new GR value. What's the new GR value? 40. Divided by current quantity. What's the current quantity? 1. What's the GR quantity? 2. So that is equals 10 plus 40 is 50 by 3. This should equal 16.67. So just go to the calculator and you'll find out that that's the correct value. Right? And now you can go on and on and on. Next time, for example, let me do one final example. Again, let's do a PO quantity of 3 at a dollar price of 30. And do you do a goods receipt? Of course, for quantity 3 at a dollar price of 30. So the dollar GR value, meaning what's the total value of goods that we have received, that would be equal to 30 into 3, $90. Now let's calculate the moving average price again. Now the moving average price is the current value. What's the current value? The current value is $50. Plus what's the new value? 90. Divided by the current quantity 3. Plus what's the current quantity? 3. $50 plus 90 is 140 divided by 6. So 140 divided by 6 is 23.33. So that's the new moving average price, right? You can go see it in the system. It will not deviate from that value. Alright. You want to test it? Let's go do it. ME21N. Same vendor 4001. And every time we have to enter this purchase order, purchase group, company code, right? It's a pain. So SAP has a provision to default your values to a certain set of values. The reason is real simple. If I have 10 coffee shops, 5 in the US, 5 in Canada, each coffee shop will have the respective people doing transactions, creating purchase orders, receiving goods, receiving invoices, paying invoices. And they'll be doing only for that respective shop or plant, assuming a shop represents a plant. So in that case, why should they go and change these values or enter these values again and again and again? The purchase org, purchase group, and purchase company code. Instead, for that user, the user sitting in Chicago plant, say, if we can default the values to the same values that he uses again and again and again, he doesn't have to enter these values every time he creates a PO. And how can he do that? Go to personal settings. Go to default values
And here for the purchase org, enter US01, and purchase group, enter 300. That's the one that we have been using, right? And for company code, also enter US01 and click save. Okay, now go back, no, and come again. You see, they're all defaulted. I didn't enter them. Now if you enter the vendor, the other field, the purchase group field, will also be defaulted, right? So you don't have to enter these fields again and again and again. Now, how about the plant? Can we default the plant? Yes. Go to personal settings, go to default values, go to item, and for plant, enter Chicago 1 and click save. Again, go back, ME21N, enter your vendor, and enter your material, say coffee beans 06, quantity of 3. You want to check the plant? See, Chicago, it's already entered, right? So that's how you default certain fields. Not all fields can be defaulted. Certain fields can be, and they are predetermined by SAP. So use that if you don't want to enter these fields again and again. So imagine a person sitting in Chicago plant. He's ordering for the Chicago plant only. So it doesn't make sense to always enter the plant for Chicago here. It's always Chicago for him. So for that user, it's always Chicago. And these are personal settings specific to a particular user, not for everybody. So if you log in with your user ID, these are not your default settings. Definitely not. So they'll not be defaulted until you go to personal settings and then set your defaults. Alright? So that's that. Now what were we trying to do overall? We were trying to create a new purchase order and see the effect of the price. So what was the price that we wanted to try? The price that we wanted to try was $30 for a quantity of 3. So let's go put $30 here. And the quantity is 3 and click save. So go to the PO, save the PO, and quickly do a goods receipt. MyGo. Paste your purchase order, and we're gonna put it in the storage location of raw materials. Click item OK and click save. Alright, so let's go back to the material and see the price changes. Go back, enter again, go to accounting view, enter Chicago, do you see that? 23.33. That's the moving average price. Want to check that? Here it is. So that's the formula to compute the moving average price. And this is how you set the defaults. Go to personal settings, and all settings in the header are in the header section, like purchase org, purchase group, company codes,
and all settings in the item are in the PO item. So once you set that, go back and come again, and all your settings will be saved, and those values will be defaulted every time you create a purchase order. So I think we are done with our detour of moving average price and valuation, and let's go on to procure non-stock materials.